Okay, so in this video we're gonna quickly go over the new concepts that I'm gonna be showing in the later process videos. What do we want? We want surface optimization, because imagine if we had to unwrap this model. All of that would be unwrapped and we cannot see pretty much any of that. We would lose a lot of UV space, and if we, let's say, are limited to 4K texture and one set, our overall resolution will be much lower. Same thing for, let's say, the insides. And we cannot just delete everything automatically, right? Because you can still see some of it. What we want, ideally, is a line that would perfectly split those, right? So I can do it manually. Let's imprint it. And so I would want to delete it something like this, where I cannot see anything. And so the surface optimization is going to be 100%. But while here it is possible, it's not a very complicated model, it would still take you a lot of time. But imagine if we were doing something like this. This might take us a week or maybe even more. But what if I told you it is actually possible to do it both with a simple model and with a complicated one in a couple of clicks? So let's quickly show how it is done. I'm gonna duplicate everything. Let's put it into a separate group. Let's union boolean everything here. Let's now turn it into a sheet by deleting a face. Let's hide it. For this method to work, you first have to select the sheet body, that is our union boolean of everything. Then you select objects that do not touch each other, otherwise they're gonna be merged into one. So I'm gonna select this one, the screws on the sides, and the knob. And if I press Q for boolean and then Shift E for intersect, now our original union sheet has turned into one of the details, so we can make it visible. And so we can clearly see how it automatically did everything that we wanted. There is some unneeded geometry, but I'm gonna tell you how to quickly fix all that automatically in the future videos. As you can see, it is perfect. The next thing that we want is, of course, a high poly. Of course, there are a couple of ways. One, you can have it separate, and then you just manually fillet everything. But it has a few problems. First of all, the obvious one, it takes time. Here it might not take you that long. The second problem is filleting complicated geometry. Not necessarily text, because you can do text in Substance after, even though sometimes the geometrical text is very important and you simply cannot fake that. Let's just imagine it's a complicated geometry that we want to fillet. Well, we can easily fillet the letter I. Can we do it with N? No, we can only go so far before it breaks. And for G it's even worse, and so on. And again, it's not about text, it can be anything that has complicated geometry. Also, a thing to note is that constant radius fillet gives us different length depending on the angle, and it might not look very good in certain places. While yes, you can do a short distance fillet, but in software where it works, it's a much more complicated operation that takes a lot more resources, and it will not work in anything remotely complicated. Our next best option would usually be ZBrush. While it's not perfect and it can sometimes blur small details, even right after dynameshing, sometimes it's just that you have one detail that is so big and has so much surface that after dynameshing with good enough resolution in order for it to be beveled, it's gonna be 40 million polygons. And you might just not be able to decimate it with Decimation Master at all. The third option would usually be using Bevel Shader in Blender, but there are some problems with that. So first of all, people usually use Bevel Shader on the low poly directly, but when you're using it on a model that consists of a single object, it's gonna bevel it as a one single shape, which we don't like. In case we want to separate it by loose parts, it's not gonna create bevels where surfaces touch each other because we will need some extra geometry for that, and I really don't want to do that because it will also take up the UV space. And the third problem is that we cannot bevel any details because they are not there on the low poly. So I'm gonna give you a revolutionary idea. We're gonna use Bevel Shader on our separate high poly. But here is a problem. What if I like the bevel on the edges, but on the text it's maybe a bit too much? Also, let's increase the sample count. Gonna make it look much better. And here is a solution for that. We're gonna use an add-on called Zen Barbecue to change the bevel size on edge-to-edge basis. And I'm gonna explain how to use all that in a real process in the next videos.